A very warm welcome to all the students of FYBCom. We are going to see a short story today. In our previous lecture, we have seen the syllabus which has been prescribed by the Savitribai Phule Pune University, Pune, and which has been compiled by the Board of Editors of Savitribai Phule Pune University, Pune. Dear students, the very first unit in your textbook is a short story written by Anton Chekhov. Anton Chekhov is a famous short story writer, born and brought up in Russia, and he has written short stories. He is considered as the pioneering member who has introduced the short stories. Anton Chekhov is known for his short stories and his one-act plays too. He has written one-act plays as well as dramas too. He started writing short stories quite from his student days. He started writing stories just to help his family financially. We are going to see the short story today, but before we start that short story, I would like to discuss with you the characteristics of short story. What is a short story? And what are the major characteristics of a short story? Because unless we study this form in detailed manner, what is short story, we may not be able to understand the short story itself. Because only reading short story is not enough. The technical side of that short story must be understood clearly. See, short story, the title itself is very suggestive. In short story, you have everything given in a very short manner. This word short is important here. Everything is very short. Let us see the major characteristics of a short story. Let us discuss the short stories. These are the major characteristics of a short story. The first one is the characters. Let us discuss the characters. In a short story, there are very few characters. Hardly a couple of characters are being used by the authors. The author, he does not describe, he does not depict the number of characters, because if he introduces number of characters in a short story, the reader is likely to get confused with the story itself. That's why in a short story, there are limited characters, very few characters. Let us say 2 or 3 characters are generally being used by the writer of the short story. So we can say limited characters in a short story. The next is a plot. Generally, in a short story, there is only one plot. The short story has no subplot at all. Now, you may have the question in your mind that what is plot? Plot means the sequence of events connected together with a single thread, connected together together with a single thread. Okay, let me explain you. What does it mean? Plot means there is only one story. A short story has no subplots. Short story can be finished within one setting. That is one more characteristics of the short story. It can be finished in one setting. In one sitting. Now sitting means when you start reading a story, you sit, you take a chair and a table, and at the table you start reading the story, and you can finish that story within half an hour or within 1 hour. That is what, within one sitting one can finish the story. It is not possible in case of a novel, because a novel can have number of pages, number of settings, hundreds of characters, hundreds of scenes, and in the novel you may have the subplots too, sub-stories too. So it has got only one plot, and there is no sub-story, no subplot. There is no subplot in the story. In a short story, there is only one story and no subplot. One plot, single plot. Plot means story. Plot means a story which is having the sequence of events, different events connected together, and it is called plot. It has no subplot. So in a short story, generally we have only one story, only one plot. Next is dialogues. Now dialogues are written in a very short manner. Generally the short story writer, he does not describe and depict, the characters does not describe everything in a very huge manner, or do not illustrate everything in a detailed manner. The characters, they use very short dialogues. The writer of the story, he deliberately writes very few dialogues so that the reader can understand it easily and can wind up the story within one sitting. Next is, so dialogues are also very short dialogues. See, there are no longer dialogues, short dialogues. Next characteristic of a short story is very few settings are there. Few scenes, we can say, few scenes and settings. Generally in a novel, there could be hundreds of scenes, hundreds of settings. Now setting means what? What do you mean by setting? See, the lecture is going on. When I deliver a lecture, I require the things like a chalk, a duster, and the classroom, okay, and you are in front of me, the students. So this is what the setting is. Likewise, in a short story, there could be settings. One setting, two setting, but not more than that in a short story. But in a novel of more than 300 pages, more than 100 pages, there could be number of scenes given in the novel. But in a short story, there are very few scenes, very few, to which we call settings also. Settings. Say, for example, in a novel, you can have the setting of a garden, you can have a setting of the college, you can have a setting that is the scene of the school or the church or the court of law, or various settings could be given in a novel. because the novel, it has no limitations as such as the short story has. Because the short story is to be wind up, it is to be finished within one sitting, within half an hour or within 1 hour. That's why the writer, the short story writer, takes into account the setting, the scenes. So again, very few scenes are there in the short story. Then the time of action. See, what is time of action? In a big novel, you can have time of action of some years. But in a short story, you may not have the time of action more than a year. Now, what is time of action? Time of action means the time span which the short story covers. Whether it covers the time of more than 2 hours, or in a novel it could be more than year or some years in a novel. But in a short story, generally the short story writer, he prefers to mention the time, that is the span of time in the life of the hero, in the life of the characters, is very limited one. It could be 1 year, it could be a short span of, or within a couple of days, writer shows that the story has taken place within a couple of days. Or even sometimes the time span it covers is of some hours only. In a short story, everything is given in a very short manner. Short dialogues, very few dialogues are used by the author. Short in the sense, yes, of course, this is a dialogue. But in a novel, you may find, yes, of course, and some more elaborative description is given by the author through the mouth of that character. That is, the mouthpieces taking talking for long time in a novel. But in case of short stories, you have very short dialogues. Time of action is limited. So we can say limited time of action. Limited time of action. Okay, limited time of action. The next one, it can be finished within one sitting. So the short story, in short, everything is used by the author in a very short manner. The setting, very few characters, very few scenes in the story, very few dialogues used by the author or his mouthpieces. The mouthpiece of the short story writer speaks for very short time, that is short dialogues. Very few characters play role in a short story, hardly a couple of characters. So in a short story, everything is given in a very short manner, which we call short story. Okay, so is it clear? I think that you have understood what the short story is. Now, let us start dealing with the story, The Beggar by Anton Chekhov. Before we start dealing with reading the story in class, let me speak about Anton Chekhov and let me just give you an idea about his life, about author's life. Anton Chekhov, born in Russia, he has written 800 short stories. It was not his profession in the beginning. Anton Chekhov started his career as a short story writer since his student life. He started studying in the university. He was a student of health science. While studying, he found that he was short of money. His financial position was not well. So, Anton Chekhov decided to join a profession. But while studying, it was not possible to serve anywhere or in any institute as such. So Anton Chekhov decided to write short stories. So he started publishing short stories in the magazines. When he published his first short story, it was very much applauded, it was very much accepted by the people, by the readers, and the same editor approached him twice for another story. And he was asked to write short stories for the magazines. And then he started writing short stories and he started earning the money. So he was studying on the one side. On the other hand, at the same time, during the empty time, he was writing short stories, and with the help of that writing, through his writing, he started helping his family too. Means he was not supporting himself, he was supporting his family members by providing them money, and he became a very good support to his own family. Later on, Anton Chekhov understood one more interesting thing, that he has the ability to write one-act plays too. As he started writing short stories, the form of short story became very famous in the society. And nowadays, it has been considered that Anton Chekhov is known for his short story. It has been considered that he is the pioneering writer who started this form of short story in literature. So I think we better stop it here, and in the next lecture we shall see the story The Beggar by Anton Chekhov. So see you in the next lecture.